A very good evening. President Trump's controversial nominee for the Supreme Court is all but confirmed tonight after senators voted to have a final vote on his appointment tomorrow. Judge Brett Kavanaugh has faced a series of allegations about his past, including that remarkable testimony last week from a woman who said she feared he might rape her. Let's talk to our US correspondent, Cordelia Lynch, who joins us now. And with the testimony that we've just heard from Senator Collins, does that in effect mean this is now a done deal?
Yes, ultimately it does. Of course, it's not over till it's over. We've got that formal vote tomorrow, but we now know, of course, Senator Susan Collins, a Republican who was considered a wavering vote, is firmly behind Brett Kavanaugh. I have also just heard as well that Joe Manchin, a Democrat from West Virginia, a very much Trump-supporting state, is also a yes. So the Republicans now have the number of votes they needed to ensure that Brett Kavanaugh makes it to the Supreme Court, despite this very fierce hostility and division both in Congress and in wider America throughout this process. And we can talk now to Janae. Janae, this is exactly the result you wanted. You surprised to hear Senator Susan Collins with such a strong rebuttal?
I'm not surprised, no. I think that the points that she made were really good. My favorite line, and I missed the very end of her speech, but when she was talking about due process and she feels the burden of that and she's not going to abandon it. That is a part of the bedrock and foundation of our country, and to abandon justice and due process in our country, it's dangerous for everyone. So I love that she made that point.
I think it's important if we can actually just listen now to what Senator Susan Collins had to say on the floor in response to Christine Blasey Ford's testimony. Take a listen.
I believe that she is a survivor of a sexual assault and that this trauma has upended her life. Nevertheless, the 4 witnesses she named could not corroborate any of the events of that evening gathering where she says the assault occurred. None of the individuals Professor Ford says were at the party has any recollection at all of that night.
So, Janae, there we hear that she believes that Christine Blasey Ford is a survivor of sexual assault, but that she didn't hear any corroborating evidence. Does that sound like someone that really believes her?
Yeah, I do, because I've been saying that. People that work with me have been saying that. Women in the organization I'm with, Concerned Women for America, have been saying that. A lot of women in our organization have been assaulted, and I don't know why Christine Blasey Ford came forward when she did. I think the timing was very interesting, but I believe that she went through something really traumatic, and I'm really heartbroken for her. We want to be empathetic to that, and I think it's really sad that it became politicized, that they took a movement, this Me Too movement, that has been allowing women a platform to say, here's what happened to me, and to see some justice, or even just to feel the freedom to be heard and to work through those emotions. And so, yeah, I think she probably did go through something traumatic, but I think it's misplaced. I think a lot of people are dealing with deep hurts and deep emotions, and hurt people. So they want to place the blame somewhere, and that's not the first time that's been done before, but I'm really glad to see that there's justice for a man and there was no corroboration for it. So we really believe in innocent until proven guilty.
Where do we go next, though? Separate to the sexual assault allegations, which for some people are already disqualifying, what about his impartiality? He himself conceded that he got very emotional. He talked about a Democratic conspiracy. How can people trust him in the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, to weigh in on critical issues like gay marriage, like abortion, like gun control.
Well, his temperament, he's been serving public service for over 25 years. He's been a judge on the D.C. Circuit Court, which is the second highest in the nation, and he has a great temperament. People vouch for that. It hasn't been an issue. So putting myself in his shoes, if I was, trying to defend my honor after being dragged through the mud, being accused of gang rape, organizing gang rape, and having to explain that to my young 10 and 13-year-old daughters and my wife watching that, I think I would be pretty upset too. And he himself admitted, I was emotional, and I think it was humble of him to admit that. And I think we've all overreacted before, and I think it was really righteous anger.
Janae, thank you very much. Well, righteous anger in the words of Janae, but for Brett Kavanaugh's opponents, it was emotional, it was partisan, and his appointment will be of grave concern, but it looks now all but certain.
Good evening. President Trump's controversial Supreme Court nominee, who's facing sexual assault claims, looks likely to be appointed this weekend after two previously undecided senators tonight said they would back him. Susan Collins, who was regarded as a Republican waverer, announced she would support Brett Kavanaugh. A Democratic senator also said he'd vote in favor of the judge. Several women have accused Mr. Kavanaugh of sexual assault allegations he denies. Our North America correspondent Nick Bryant reports from Washington.
This uniquely American melodrama is reaching its conclusion. Capitol Hill now the scene of protest night and day.
This is for those who love democracy!
Donald Trump claims these were professional protesters, paid for by the liberal billionaire George Soros. But they came to the nation's capital of their own will in a last-ditch attempt to block Brett Kavanaugh's nomination.
You can stop this! It's not too late!
Their pleas directed at his Republican backers.
So many of the fault lines of American politics converge on the Supreme Court: abortion, gun rights, gay marriage, which is why this debate is so very passionate.
The vote in the Senate was procedural, but it had the potential to kill off the nomination. So the Republican Majority Leader made what sounded like a closing argument.
The uncorroborated mud and the partisan noise and the physical intimidation of members here in the Senate will not have the final say around here. The Senate will have the final say.
And when the vote finally came, it passed by the narrowest of margins.
On this vote, the yeas are 51, the noes are 49. The motion is agreed to.
America has been transfixed by the allegations from Christine Blasey Ford that Brett Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her as a teenager, a claim he strenuously denied.
I'm innocent. I'm innocent of this charge.
The senator for Maine.
And tonight, a key, wavering female Republican senator announced she'd back his nomination in the final vote tomorrow.
I do not believe that these charges can fairly prevent Judge Kavanaugh from serving on the court. I will vote to confirm Judge Kavanaugh.
Who'd have thought back in July, when Donald Trump first nominated him, that this suburban dad would be the focus of such a fight? But it's ended with a major victory for the White House. Donald Trump will get his man. The Supreme Court will soon have a more decisive conservative majority. This brutal and ugly confirmation fight has felt like a clash between two divergent Americas. In a Washington that's ever more tribal, in a country that's ever more polarized. Brett Kavanaugh will be confirmed by the Senate tomorrow. And this has been a milestone moment in American history, one that has pitted Donald Trump against the Me Too movement, one that has pitted conservative America against liberal America, one where the question has often been not just who do you believe, but whose side are you on? And this is such a major victory for the White House. It instantly gives Donald Trump a legacy. Within 2 years of entering the White House, he has managed to get two right-wing justices on the Supreme Court, and they should be there for decades to come, long after Donald Trump has left office.
Nick Bryant, thank you. A man who tried to push two people onto the tracks on the London Underground has been found guilty of attempted murder. Paul Crossley said he had chosen his victims at random and hadn't intended to kill them. One of the people he pushed was the 91-year-old former boss of Eurotunnel, Sir Robert Malpass, who was left with a fractured pelvis. Richard Lister's report contains some shocking images.
Watch the man in the Mac. He's Sir Robert Malpass, aged 90, and he never saw this coming. Sir Robert is badly hurt. Commuters try to raise the alarm. Eventually, one of them pulls him to safety. A little earlier, another attack at another station. Tobias French just avoids the train pulling in, but his assailant escapes. When passengers finally grabbed Paul Crossley, he said he knew what he'd done was wrong. He told the court he'd had an allergic reaction to his schizophrenia medication.
This was a most shocking incident, and the victims in this case were extremely lucky to have survived. This could have easily been a double murder investigation and more victims.
Crossley said the attacks here and at Tottenham Court Road Station were not planned and he didn't intend to kill anyone. The jury disagreed, but the judge says Crossley's mental state will be considered before he passes sentence. The police stress this kind of attack is extremely rare, but for these two men, it could easily have been far worse. Richard Lister, BBC News.
Good evening. The US Senate has given the go-ahead to a final vote tomorrow on the appointment of Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the nation's Supreme Court. As they did, there were noisy protests, literally in the corridors of power, from supporters and opponents. Nominated by President Trump, Kavanaugh has faced accusations of historical sexual assaults, an FBI investigation, and a minute examination of his judge track record. His opponents say it combines to make him an inappropriate final arbiter of what is legally right and wrong in the United States. His supporters, including President Trump, don't. Tomorrow's likely confirmation will amplify those divisions.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
Tonight, senators who have said they will vote for Judge Kavanaugh are facing a ferocious backlash, including the one Democrat Joe Manchin, who is siding with Republicans. Those senators who wavered all day have been besieged by activists and reporters. Standing at the back of the lift here is Susan Collins, the Republican from Maine, who has been the focus of so much attention.
Don't you wave your hand at me!
Another Republican, a staunch backer of Judge Kavanaugh, was confronted as he tried to make his way past. When you grow up, he replied, and then dismissively waved them goodbye.
On this vote, the yeas are 51, the noes are 49.
Senators agreed by the narrowest of margins today to proceed to a climactic vote this weekend. At stake, whether Judge Kavanaugh, accused of an attempted rape when he was a teenager, makes it onto the Supreme Court.
To understand the protests and the passions here, come into the office of Susan Collins, the senator who everyone is furiously lobbying.
Public, have you ever been attacked?
You don't understand. Excuse me.
The arguments are deeply personal.
You know, he is a well-qualified person. We need
to look for another candidate.
Pro and anti-Kavanaugh activists talking at each other, but completely unable to listen to the opposing view. Susan Tolford feels the nation is being ripped apart by this extreme partisanship.
Because it's all politics.
You said you were going to let me speak. We've got to figure this out, because otherwise I just feel like we're destroying our country.
Others in this office are in tears.
I'm sorry.
Including a survivor of sexual assault from Wisconsin, who says a Kavanaugh victory would be a humiliation for all women.
A vote for Kavanaugh is a vote for the people who inflicted this trauma on us.
She later told me that with Justice Clarence Thomas also accused of indecent behavior on the court, there was a new reality to absorb.
1/3 of the men on the Supreme Court stand accused of sexual assault. If Brett Kavanaugh is confirmed, that will be the case.
That's shocking.
I don't find it shocking, though. Unfortunately, I wish I found it shocking. I find it disturbing. I find it demoralizing.
Amid the anguish, Democrats implored Republicans to find another nominee.
For the sake of the Senate, of the Supreme Court, and of America, I hope, I pray, my colleagues will do so.
Republicans replied they were standing between America and mob rule.
What left-wing groups and their Democratic allies have done to Judge Kavanaugh isn't nothing short of monstrous.
A short time ago, Senator Collins revealed her hugely anticipated decision.
Mr. President, I will vote to confirm Judge Kavanaugh.
That broke the heart of liberals across the country, who were intently watching this moment. Tomorrow is the final vote, with the divisions here starker than ever before.
And Robert joins us live now, as you can see, from Washington. High drama and high significance, Robert. Talk us through tomorrow's vote and what you expect from it.
Well, almost all senators, Alistair, have now declared their hand. It looks like the vote, the climactic vote tomorrow, will be 51 to 49 in favour of confirming Judge Brett Kavanaugh, with just one senator from each party breaking ranks. And as you might expect, the Liberals are dejected here, Republicans and Conservatives very much euphoric. The White House has tweeted out a message to Republican senators saying, thank you for standing by your convictions. But everybody I've spoken to here regards this in many ways as the opening skirmish to the two major political battles ahead, the midterm elections in just a month's time, and then, of course, to the presidential election in just over 2 years' time in 2020. So really that is the sense that this is just the manoeuvring, the mobilization before those two big battles. So the Senate vote, when it happens tomorrow, it really in many ways means that this trench warfare is actually just beginning.
Robert, thank you.